Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Jeff. Got another story today that I wanted to talk about. And today I want to tell you the story about the first moment, the first breakthrough kind of aha moment I had when I finally realized that I was going to make it as a software engineer. Kind of that moment that it clicked, that my confidence level finally went from not believing in myself and realizing that this was something that I was going to be able to accomplish. I was having a conversation with my partner, and she recently went swimming at a local high school. They had like open gym, and they had a pool at their high school. And this is kind of where that idea and that this story kind of I reminded myself of this story. And how this came about was actually like she went swimming. Started talking about how that pool that was at the high school she went to here in the Bay Area was nicer than the pool that she had at her school. And it made me think about how, and she asked me how the pool was at my high school. I it was just funny because it's like, reminding me that, my school that I went to definitely did not have a pool. And it brought me down into this rabbit hole of checking out how my school is doing statistics wise. Just as if you've seen some of my other videos, I always talk about how I came from low income and recently looked at the statistics because of that conversation. And just to give you a little insight, we're still currently at the bottom 6 percentile in math and the bottom 14th percentile in the United States in reading skills. So this story that I want to tell you about this moment, I guess was much bigger than just realizing that I could become a programmer and that, I was getting this. It was actually one of the very first moments in my life where I felt like I wasn't behind or catching up or bombing, failing the class or whatever it may be. And I figured this would be a good one to tell because I think anybody out there that's working towards a goal, working towards something that they want to accomplish, this is kind of one of those moments that I think a lot of people want to reach. And I just wanted to tell you mine just for the sake of motivation and just showing an example of someone that did get to that point. Okay, so to start off the story, I wanted to give you a little bit of background, right? I was probably about 24, 25 at that time. I did do a coding boot camp. And so the story takes place during the time of my coding boot camp, about halfway through. I did the Hack Reactor boot camp back in the day, and it was like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., 6 days a week. And just to give you context, right before I was doing the boot camp, I actually could not get a job like in my field out of college. And so I was doing construction. I was teaching myself how to code during my construction job, story for another time. But I also then proceeded to fail the test to get into the boot camp. Not many people realize this, but to get into some of the better boot camps, as I did in the time, I don't know if Hack Reactor still is good or not, but during the time you had to actually test into it. And so I actually failed the test twice. And on my third attempt, usually what they say is if you fail for the third time, it's usually one of those where you have to take like a year off to study before you can reapply again. And so I was like literally scraped the bottom of the barrel, got into my cohort, and this was overall just an incredible experience for myself. One, it was the first time where I feel like I truly accomplished something and got in, even though I barely got in. But what actually hit my confidence even harder was that for the first time ever, I was surrounded by people that were just personally, I felt was very, very far ahead of me in life. Not only was I one of the younger folks in my class, being like relatively close to graduating from college, a lot of the folks were like in their this was like a career change for them. There's folks in my class that had degrees from like the top universities in the nation, and just a group of really inspiring folks that were really hustling and bustling like myself, but had, like, in my opinion, personally, a lot stronger foundation. And you can imagine I was just a kid 6 months ago, before I quit, my construction job, before I got into the boot camp. I was like, doing construction with my hard hat on, with my bag of tools, and now I'm here pretending like I was a programmer of some sorts. And so, again, right, this story has to do with these moments. So a lot of the curriculum during this time period, there's a lot of pairing curriculums. So what I mean by that is that they'll pair you up with somebody in the class, and two of you guys will go ahead and go through one of the topics of that day or that week, that kind of thing. We basically sprinted topics 2 days at a time. And so imagine we've been doing this for quite some time. And the topic specifically, you guys want to know, it was actually Angular JS, which is a front-end framework used to help build websites. And crazy enough, this actually became this technology was actually the first job, what I did at my first job after the boot camp. And so to paint the picture right, it's been probably halfway through the boot camp, maybe probably 40% through the boot camp. This was definitely one of the later topics. And I get paired with a gentleman, great gentleman, has a master's degree from Stanford. He had like a bachelor's from Stanford as well. I think it was like electrical engineering or something like that. Super bright gentleman, somebody that I like looked up to. And honestly, I think till that day, of course, now things are different, but in that moment, I think that was the first person I ever met or had like more than a 2-minute conversation with that went to a top school in the nation. So we're pairing on this topic, right? We're both completely stuck. And then put yourself in my shoes. I've been doing completely, probably below average this entire time. I wasn't a student that folks would be looking forward to pair with, right? Most people knew my background. I didn't really talk about the construction job at the time very much, mainly because I felt pretty much embarrassed just being in front of most folks that already had white collar jobs. And so definitely wasn't a person that folks were looking forward to getting as a partner, but I did at the time get paired with this gentleman. And I honestly looked at this person like someone that was just out of the stratosphere for myself. And so I working with them. And very quickly, I realized that we're both incredibly stuck on this topic. Both of us don't actually know what's going on. And we finished the first day actually like really far behind versus some of our other classmates. And that was a little bit of a shock to me, right? Like I just thought this person with their background and also being a great person in general, I thought it was going to be like a really strong pairing partner for myself and someone that I could be able to learn from. And I'm sure I could have learned from them in many other aspects, but this specific topic, programming wise, it just wasn't it. And so I made a really active decision because we were so far behind on this topic. Keep in mind again, right? Each of these classes were like, this was in person at the time. Each of these classes was from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And it was 6 days a week again. I think this fell on like the middle of the week, for example. And I took the active decision to actually, even after class, usually folks would spend probably maybe 30 minutes, an hour, maybe an hour and a half after class to keep on doing the topic. But that day, I just felt like I needed to really, really step it up. And so I took the initiative to actually stay up, and really hammer down the topic. And I remember staying up until 1 a.m. And this is not good, right? Like if you stay up till 1 a.m., you got to realize that you got to be there, commute, get there by 8, and you have the next 4 or 5 days that you're going to do 15-hour days or whatever it may be. So one really bad sleep schedule could really, for me, would have really thrown me off. But some reason I just felt the urge to be able to overcome this obstacle. And I wanted to be able to wake up the next morning and help us break out of this obstacle and advance us a little bit further. I remember being up at really late at night, and it finally clicked to me. It finally completely clicked to me of how the technology worked. And I learned enough to be able to functionally work and create something in Angular JS. It was such like an aha moment for myself. And on top of that, I show up the next morning. And of course, right, like my partner didn't put in that sort of time. And we came back, kind of left off at where we were the day before. And so I kind of like put the team on my back. And for the first time ever, it was like, I realized that I was going to have to be the teacher in this moment and lead us through and help us understand the topic and lead us through the curriculum for the next day. I got a lot out of this, right? And it really was the first time that not only was I not behind, I was actually ahead and actually on the opposite side, especially with probably one of the smartest people I've ever met, or someone with like the highest credentials I've ever met, I guess. And in that moment, other than being able to finish that topic of the class, I really realized that I could do it. I really realized I could do it because it was a moment that I realized that all the work that I've put in, all those days that I studied after working the construction job, all that period of times of failing into getting the boot camp, it was like everything at once finally added up into that moment. And I leveraged every single experience I had to be able to learn that topic in the way I needed to. And I finally broke past kind of finally jumped over that wall of the lacking confidence and not believing that I had enough skills to accomplish this, right? And I think that it was a recognition that from the beginning of even getting into the boot camp or very early on, it's like what was holding me back was a true, deep lack in confidence. And for the first time ever, I was finally, not only was I on the right track, but I was also ahead, and it was a big jump. And the first time I ever felt not being physically like 20 steps behind like I once was when I was like getting D's and F's and C's and in college, that kind of thing. I hate to compare with somebody and leverage somebody else's credentials, right? But there was a large aspect to that too, where going back to the initial part of the story of like, how my high school that I went to, middle schools that I went to, were in the bottom 6th percentile in the nation for mathematics. It's like, I just was able to visualize all the background, all the things that I've been through up to that point, right? And I think about this other person that's had this like top of the edge education, and we were both landed in the exact same spot in life, even though they were older than me, that kind of thing. We came from such extreme differences that in that moment we were the same. And I realized that on that equal plane, I could, and in fact, I was able to perform and learn the things that I needed to learn to get to that next point. And it just made me realize that I could keep on doing it every single day, day in and day out. And I think that was the true first moment where in my head, it clicked to me that like I was a software engineer at that point, and I wasn't just like a hobbyist going to a library every single day, trying to do for loops and learn how to write in JavaScript. It was the first time ever I felt like a true engineer. And I think ever since then, from that moment, I never looked back. And so it was just a great time to have, right? Of course, I had my obstacles moving forward after that, like looking for a job and that kind of thing. But I can truly say that from that moment on, it's like I felt for the first time ever, I felt being ahead rather than being behind. And that was a powerful thing for myself. And so I just want to be able to share that story. And I hope that if you're chasing what you're chasing and out there, I hope that you come to this point as well. And, I think that's the hope, the most I wish for, and why I kind of make these videos, because moments like that and all that, the build up leading up to that made it all worth it. And so I hope that other folks experience that in their own life as well, outside of just programming or whatever it may be, whatever your goal may be. I hope you have that one moment, that aha moment, that you kind of start heading towards a different fork, like heading towards a different route, right? It's like that first time you finally take the exit that you've been going straight on that highway for such a long time. And that's kind of how it felt. I finally was able to take that exit and start heading a different direction. I hope you enjoyed that story. If you have any questions, please let me know. If not, I'll talk to you later.